In our Global Alliance, we believe that caring for our communities and the earth has been an age-old honor and responsibility. And over the years, it's been held and stewarded largely by women. To illustrate this perhaps a bit more eloquently than I can, and to share a bit more about what exactly it is that we do, I'd love for us to go and share a short video. So can we play that, please? We're so grateful that you're here and that you have joined and become part of our Global Alliance. And while we're gathering virtually today, and because we have a global team located around the world, I wanted to acknowledge all of the ancestral and unceded lands upon which we're calling in from, and the Indigenous nations that have and continue to steward those lands. We as an organization, as community members, have a responsibility to do all that we can to be good guests of the lands upon which we stand and its original caregivers. And while land acknowledgements are an important first step, they must always be followed up with action. At WEA, we take action by naming the ongoing, normalized, and unjust colonization of Indigenous lands, by collaborating with local Indigenous leaders in our work, and in the San Francisco Bay Area, which has always been a central gathering place for the WEA team, we do this through our Shumi land tax, which supports our Ohlone colleagues at the Segorte Land Trust as they do the important work of rematriating their lands. So thank you for being a part of the shared vision of our alliance, in which our future is not only thriving and sustainable, but just. So today's event is part of our ongoing World Weavers for Lawn series. This is a series of events created to connect you directly with the work, issues, and actions that are happening on the ground. To that end, they are designed to be action-oriented, so not only will you hear informative and inspiring stories from leaders around the world and learn about the issues that they're facing, but you'll also hear about how you can be part of that solution. Over the next 45 minutes or so, 45 minutes to an hour, You'll hear stories from the field that shine a light on the community-based climate solutions that are making an impact across East Africa. I'll offer just a bit of background and framing for the conversation. Then we're honored to have with us two of our WEA colleagues, Rose Wamalwa and Dr. Annesha Chowdhury, who will be sharing more on this topic. After that, we'll have some time for questions before we wrap up. And then after the call, as I mentioned, you'll receive a call recording and details on the ways you can take action inspired by today's call. So keep an eye out for that, and that's where we'll link to that video that we just played. Does that sound good to everyone? Great. Okay. So before diving into this very rich presentation and conversation, I wanted to take a minute to share some background on why women, why East Africa, and what more than a decade of working in this region in close partnership with leaders and community-based organizations like Rose and Women in Water and Natural Resource Conservation has looked like. I don't think it'll come as a surprise to many of you, but data from the African Development Bank shows that Africa is the most vulnerable continent to climate change, despite having contributed the least to global warming and having the lowest emissions. Furthermore, a report by the COP27 presidency found that to design and implement effective adaptation strategies, it is imperative to capitalize on the overwhelming benefit of bringing women into climate action. The report states that African women are key agents of change in the fight against the global crisis of this magnitude. The wealth and knowledge in managing natural resources that African women have cumulatively acquired is indispensable for effective adaptation policies and actions. African women must be further supported with adequate capacity building, technological and financial means, centering their leadership and knowledge if we are serious about improving the effectiveness of climate action. And WEA has a deep 15-year history in East Africa specifically, beginning with our Women in Water programming, where WEA and our partners built an action network of women in water champions, receiving training and funding to build and install rainwater harvesting systems, storage tanks, biosand water filters, and VIP toilets, providing over 100,000 people with water and sanitation across 10 African countries. Our COVID and climate resilience programming has supported thousands of grassroots women leaders throughout East Africa to distribute life-saving supplies, secure health and safety needs, and build skills and knowledge via their existing women's network. Our Women Eco Entrepreneur Accelerators are capacity building programs for women in environmentally threatened regions to access training, mentorship, seed grants, and networks of support. With these resources in hand, the leaders then go on to launch their own income generating projects and train others to do the same. And our Women in Forest programming throughout East Africa partners with grassroots women-led forest restoration and protection initiatives to collaboratively restore and protect degraded forests, sequester carbon, and create viable livelihood alternatives to deforestation for long-term forest and community resilience. And this work, and all of our work around the world, is built on partnerships. And we are so lucky to have had a 10+ year partnership with Rose Wamalwa and her local NGO, Women in Water and Natural Resource Conservation, or WWANC. Through this partnership, we pool local and global knowledge, resources, and networks to co-design and implement projects. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce our first guest speaker today, Rose. Rose began working with WEA in 2011 when she was selected as a fellow for our Global Women's Water Initiative in East Africa. Rose participated in a rigorous training program, which included leadership development, WASH education, water testing, action planning, and hands-on construction of toilets, rainwater harvesting systems, and water treatment. She worked with grassroots women's teams and to provide support in planning, development, and implementation of technologies and water projects in their communities in Kenya and Tanzania, supporting them to build technologies, plan holistic strategies, and design sustainable projects. Rose then launched her own organization, WWANC, which improves the lives of women and girls and other vulnerable children in East Africa through access to education, health services, and capacity building for economic empowerment. Today, Rose guides WEA's work in East Africa, focusing on building women's climate resilience in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. Rose has deep experience in community development, social entrepreneurship, and transformational leadership for women's empowerment. She develops training programs for women that equip them with the skills, tools, and resources to address the impacts of the climate crisis and build their leadership. Women trained in these programs over the last 10 years have increased food security, sustainably managed forests, created access to wash services, and provided life-saving relief in climate emergencies. Through WEA's Women in Forest initiatives, Rose has been instrumental in leading the efforts to enhance the culture of planting native trees through community conservation dialogues and training. She's worked tirelessly to promote women's participation in community forest restoration initiatives, and with an ambitious goal of planting 100,000 indigenous trees to restore the Kakamega tropical rainforest in Western Kenya, Rose is one of WEA's most inspiring leaders who has ensured the sustainability of ecological integrity and biological diversity for local and global benefits, including community-based climate adaptation measures and climate resilience. Rose is a trainer, a certified enterprise development agent by UNDP Kenya, a WASH advocate, a climate protection champion, and an environmental activist. And while we have Rose here with us today, there's a bit of weather in Kenya that has made connectivity a little bit of a challenge, but that's okay. We are, as always, prepared for this. Rose has sent along a video presentation for you. And so we're gonna play that and we're gonna cross our fingers that our tech is gonna work seamlessly. And then Rose will be able to jump in with our Q&A in real time. But for now, let's play that video and hear about the amazing work Rose is doing.
Jambo, my name is Rose Wamalwa and I'm the WEA East Africa Program Director, and I'm also the founder of Women in Water and Natural Resource Conservation, a women-led organization in Kenya. I started working with WEA in 2011 when I was selected as a fellow with the Global Women's Water Initiative program that was working with grassroots women championing issues of access to safe water and sanitation services. And so today I'm happy to report that I'm guiding the WEA work in East Africa. And basically we are focusing on building women's climate resilience in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. I have deep experience in community development, social entrepreneurship, and transformational leadership for women empowerment. I hold a diploma in analytical chemistry, a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, and a master's in development studies. I'm currently pursuing a PhD in organizational development. Yes, why are we working with women? Let me quote the UN Women, a phrase that says, when women and girls make up more than half the world's population, and they are on the front lines, often more deeply impacted than men and boys by poverty, climate change, food insecurity, lack of healthcare, and global economic crisis. Their contributions and leadership are central to finding a solution. Since 2019, we are in East Africa, we've been able to focus on reducing the impact of climate change within vulnerable communities by promoting women's climate leadership and empowerment. WEA encourages government and stakeholders to partner with grassroots women, listen to them, and scale up community-led solutions, because you cannot differentiate, or rather you cannot avoid women when you really want to address issues of climate change. That is why in East Africa, WEA is focusing on grassroots women. And how do we work? Our model is actually, taking a different approach than just investing in a well that might fail, leaving a community with neither water nor self-reliance, or providing a one-time loan that could leave a woman in debt and without options. Yes, we invest in instrumental women leaders working at the grassroots level to secure their communities' natural resources, stability, and health. With local leadership guiding each initiative, WEA designs entrepreneur capacity building programs for women in environmentally threatened regions to access training, mentorship, funding, and alliance building. With these resources in hand, leaders launch their own income generating activities or projects, and of course they train others to do the same. So there's that ripple effect whereby we train the women to go back to their respective communities so that they can continue with the process. And so research on health and climate crisis alike increasingly support WEA's model. Training, resourcing, and connecting women leaders generates economic prosperity and planetary health at scale for beyond project investment. So that is why we work with women, and that is why we have taken that women-centered development initiative in East Africa. Let me talk about our model, and of course, as I had mentioned, our focus is on women, and we are also looking at the earth, and of course, the formation of the alliance. So by providing the skills and tools, so that these women are able to really address challenges of climate change in their respective communities. We don't want them to wait for donors to come. We don't want them to wait for the government to come. But with the available resources, they're able to address the impact of climate change. We are also looking at mentorship, which is very key, because as Wangari Maathai says, it has to be teamwork. Because when you focus on an individual, a time comes when there's no one to continue with the process. Of course, there's also the aspect of funding where we provide seed grants, however small, but we've seen this really transform lives and livelihoods because they're able to boost their climate smart enterprises in their respective communities. And about the Global Alliance, we are connecting the women in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania so that they're able to learn from one another. And because WEA believes that when we are forming a movement of women climate accelerators, we are passing this knowledge to the next generation. And of course, we are happy that many women are now leaders in climate-related solutions. And of course, they are working towards protecting the environment, the mother nature, and of course, building up more leaders across East Africa and Africa in general. We are building livelihood and community resilience through women-led environmental and climate solutions. And by that, we are focusing on self-help group mobilization, where we have women in their respective villages coming together and mobilizing other women groups to come together as a movement of women championing climate solutions. Of course, there's the aspect of training, capacity building, and financial skills, because we want to equip these women with climate smart, or rather eco-entrepreneurial skills, where that will help them thrive in the face of climate change. And of course, we are referring to savings and training them on how best they can save and loaning amongst themselves, because we know that even if we really want them to address climate change, it's important for them also to use these skills to be economically empowered, so that they can be able to put food on the table for their families, and also take care of their children, take care of their school fees, because in Africa, women are the backbone of the family. So there's also the aspect of WASH, technology, climate change mitigation, education, economic empowerment for women and girls, and of course women leadership and rights. There's the aspect of networking and knowledge exchange. Also in Kenya, we are working across the country with about 11 counties. We have Kakamega, Bungoma. We have the marginalized counties like Masai and in Narok. And of course, recently we are working with the indigenous community like Ogek, that I'll talk about later. And so there's the arid and semi-arid counties like Makueni and the Homa Bay. And so we're excited that through this program, many Kenyan counties are benefiting from this WEA initiative. So in East Africa, we are working in Kenya through Women in Water and Natural Resource Conservation, an organization that I co-founded in 2012. Then in Tanzania, we are working with Bukoba Women's Empowerment Association. And in Uganda, we have two organizations, Uganda Women's Water Initiative and Wise Women Uganda, who are based in Gulu, the northern part of Uganda. So you can see the impact that we are having. Women across East Africa have been impacted by this project, and we look forward to moving to other African countries and just to make sure that the women, the grassroots women, are not left behind. About the program overview, as I had earlier mentioned, the project aims to actually create employment opportunities and reduce poverty in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania through economic, climate smart technologies, and of course with a special focus on community-based nature solutions, women climate entrepreneurs, and alliance building through leadership development. Just to mention a few of the eco businesses that we are championing, we have the beekeeping, we are talking about agroforestry, mushroom farming. There's of course community solar solutions around. A number of households now are benefiting from energy saving jikos across East Africa. And then there's the aspect of ecotourism, where the women are involved in tourism related activities where they can also earn an income. And of course there's that aspect of biogas processes at household level. So yeah, our work in East Africa actually is focusing on solving complex social problems that starts at grassroots level. Because we know that when we start at the bottom, we'll be able to handle some of the complex issues, because the women are able to know the challenges, and they do have the best solutions to handle these challenges. I think it's also important for me to mention about this very special community that I'm very passionate talking about. It's the Ogek community in Kenya, and they are based, this is a community, it's actually an indigenous community, and originally they're believed to be to call a forest as their home. So they live in the forest, and in Kenya they live in Mau Forest and also in Mount Elgon. They're also found in Baringo County. So we are excited. Recently we had a women climate resilience training in Kakamega, where 3 members from this group came to join with other women from different counties, and they were excited, and they said they have been marginalized for a very long time, and they felt appreciated by WEA, just inviting them to be part of this movement, joining other women in Kenya who are addressing climate change. So we are excited to partner with these very, very incredible people, and we hope that in our future projects we are going to give them a platform also to learn from the climate related initiatives, and also help in forest conservation, so that they are not having issues with the government. So Basically, that is what we are doing in East Africa, and so I'm so excited that WEA has brought this project this far, and we hope to even scale up in the next coming months. And so thank you so much. Let me allow my colleague Annesha to talk about the impact of this project in East Africa. Thank you very much.
We are so grateful to you, Rose, for your leadership and your tireless championing that you do to center grassroots women's leadership, and also for doing your absolute best to make sure we are prepared for whatever tech may have in store for us. So I can see your square here on my screen. We're grateful to have you with us, and I'm excited to dive into some questions with you here live towards the end of our call. But right now, I would love to turn things over to our next guest, Dr. Annesha Chowdhury. Annesha is an ecologist, a conservationist, and an agroecosystem researcher by training. She has worked with grassroots community in the Sikkim Darjeeling Himalayas, where she incorporated an integrated, interdisciplinary, participatory approach to research, learning, and solutions. Annesha has worked with and alongside grassroots projects in India, Kenya, and the United States for many years, serving the needs of systemically underserved communities with a specific focus on women and young girls, providing support through training and mentoring. And we're so lucky to have Annesha serving as WEA's Global Programs Manager, where she works closely with WEA's regional program directors in Indonesia, India, and East Africa, and West Africa, including Rose, to design and implement holistic programs empowering women's climate leadership. So Annesha, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kahea. Let me just quickly share my screen. Thank you so much, Kahea, for the introduction. And it gives me great pleasure to talk about WEA's impact in East Africa through the visionary leadership of Rose Wamalwa. But before I talk about the direct impact of WEA's work in East Africa alone, I wanted to shed some light on WEA's impact philosophy, which is deeply rooted in values of care, agency, environmental justice, equity, with a deep focus on unity, thriving, and connection between women leaders who are at the forefront of addressing the adverse impacts of climate change. As such, WEA measures impact across regions using global indicators like the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, WEA's initiatives focus on increasing income by launching eco-enterprises and climate-resilient livelihoods through increased food resilience and food security, by investing in women's leadership who care for our earth and our indigenous food systems, thus leading to no poverty. In another example, upholding gender equity through increased participation of grassroots women in political decision-making and local leadership, where more people are exposed to the benefits of environmental initiatives through women's advocacy. Furthermore, we also ensure the women and their communities have access to sanitation solutions and clean and safe drinking water. Their solutions provide affordable and sustainable energy solutions and actively support the protection of life on land through the preservation of their ecosystems and the environment. This brings me to WEA's impact in East Africa through Rose's monumental leadership of long-lasting impact through deep engagement with the community and constantly supporting women-led initiatives in East Africa. In fact, in the last year alone, the East Africa programs reached 10,000 women and girls directly, engaging with about 1.3 million people, and they managed to establish 112 tree nurseries that were the source of reforesting hectares of land by planting 185,988 trees, and that effort is continuing. Through her efforts, she also managed to train 4,000 people on climate smart technologies, who were able to then sell 2,000 improved cook stoves. And specifically in Kenya alone, through programs such as the Women in Forest Initiative, the Women in Climate Accelerator Program, the COVID in Climate Resilience Training Program, the Women's Eco-Entrepreneurship Programs, 4,000 women were trained directly, reaching 8,000 people through the COVID and Climate Resilience Training. Almost 500 people launched cook stove enterprises. 120 hectares of land was cultivated with agroforestry, supporting almost 3,000 and more people selling produce. Over 7,000 people contributed to kitchen gardens, and 28 tree nurseries were established, which were the source of 153,000 indigenous trees planted to reforest Kakamega rainforest, all through grassroots women leadership. In Uganda, 550 women and girls received training on climate smart technology, establishment of tree nurseries, and forest management. They managed to establish 60 nurseries in the last year alone for indigenous tree saplings, and over 150 women launched their own climate smart enterprises, increasing their income by 20% in the first year itself. In Tanzania, almost 4,000 people received training on climate smart technology, tree nurseries, and again, agroforestry and forest management. And this effort is continuing. They have managed to establish 3 community tree nurseries and plant 29,000 indigenous trees in deforested areas with the women leaders working with local leadership such as churches and other communities. They also managed to plant 420 fruiting trees so that women leaders and their families could earn a sustainable income. And 50 households were directly working to promote reforestation and agroforestry. Through this program, WEA has reached and transformed the lives of 60,000 people in Tanzania. But WEA's projects have had a long-lasting impact on its participants, and this is best conveyed through the words of the women leaders by themselves. And so I wanted to read out a couple of quotes from our leaders. Fatuma Erima said that this project has given us a platform to actively participate in community conservation initiatives. As women, we have always been left out, yet our life revolves around forests because that is from where we fetch water, firewood, and herbal medicine. Consoletta, for example, said that only God knows the kind of transformation WEA and WWANC has brought in my life. Today, I'm a climate change trainer in my own community. The project has given me the platform to exercise the power and potential I have as a woman. Thank you, WEA. Thank you, WWANC. My life has just started. Mama Som Hassan says, as a Muslim woman, I would have never thought that one day I will be somewhere in the public. But WEA and WWANC supported me when I was almost sinking. The entrepreneurship training has transformed my business. I now know how to keep records and I'm making a good profit. Apart from this, WEA's impact story and impact story in East Africa especially would not be complete without stories from the Women's Climate Entrepreneurship Program in Kenya. So I have 2 stories to share with you. Mary Wasawa, so I'm going to read their stories in their own words. I'm Mary Waswa and a beneficiary from the Amani Women's Group in Trans Nzoia County in Kenya. I'm a widow left with 8 children and no income. After the climate change, resilience, and COVID-19 training, I went home and maximized the small piece of land that I had to set up 8 sack gardens in my own compound. After 1 month, my life completely changed. Every week, I get 15,000 Kenyan shillings from my kitchen garden, and now I'm the best supplier of vegetables across Trans Nzoia County. I have managed to take my children back to school, bought 2 dairy cows, and also a piece of land in Kitale. I'm very grateful to WWANC and WEA for the training. I never knew that this piece of land my husband left me would transform my life and my children's lives. after the climate change and food security training by WEA and WWANC. I now have 3 meals a day and I pay school fees for all my 8 children without struggling. I am now an empowered woman. Similarly, Mary Iga says that since the outbreak of COVID-19, my family had been struggling a lot and I needed to find ways to live so that my family could have some food on the table. After hearing about UWWI through Nakazebwe Betty on the tree planting and nursery establishment project, I was excited to join them. I'm happy to say that I can now make my own nursery bed at home, and I have so far managed to sell seedlings worth 400,000 Uganda currency. The fruit trees we are planting will benefit a person like me in the following ways. A person like me will get fruits, shade, sell and make money. If trees are big, I can cut the trees and make items such as desks, doors, windows, and even build a house. I am very excited. Protecting the environment is the only way to go to save our future generations. Long live UWWI, long live WEA. But this is just what I was talking about is just the impact from last year alone. This year, Rose and her teams in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda have a huge plan for impact, long-lasting impact in East Africa. They are planning to grow and scale up grassroots women and entrepreneur-led climate solutions, provide capacity building trainings, more trainings, one-on-one mentorship, and seed grants to more than 1,000 women. They want to plant at least 100,000 indigenous trees, which will potentially sequester 900 tons of carbon annually from the atmosphere to mitigate the climate change impact. They are also planning to establish 5,000 bio-intensive regenerative gardens for food security and reaching over 1 million people through this programming. And with that, I come to the end, and I want to share a quote that Rose loves very much and is something that we are very much. Standing for all women around the world, because when women thrive, the earth thrives. Thank you so much.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Annesha and Rose, for sharing this work, this vision, those beautiful impact stories. You know, so often our impact can just be numbers. And we see that kind of in the NGO space, but it's really powerful when you can hear from the women themselves, how their lives are changed, because that's the point, right? To change lives and to protect the earth. So hearing those stories is really powerful for me. Thank you so much. I know firsthand how incredibly passionate you both are about women's leadership and climate action. And I'm deeply appreciative of all you're doing to ideate, innovate, and steward not just this partnership and this program, but this model of what's possible in our movements and in this work that we know will require everyone. I want to open the floor up for some questions. We have about 10 minutes or so for questions. So at this time, I invite anyone, if you have any questions for Rose and Annesha that they haven't answered in their presentation, please go ahead and put it in the chat. Our team will gather the questions and we'll ask as many of them as we can before the end of the call. But as we wait for folks to get their questions in, I did have a few of my own. The first is for Rose. I was wondering if you could share with us what a typical day looks like in the life of a WEA leader who maybe is going through one of the WEA WWANC programs. Could you walk us through that day if possible? Where is Rose? Is Rose still with us? Rose, I think I see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kahia, for having me. And thank you for everyone and joining this very important meeting. I just want to say that for a typical day for a WEA leader, for me in particular, the first thing that I have to make sure that I'm in touch
with the women accelerators in different counties in Kenya and different communities in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. You have to get in touch, probably through calling them and listening to their challenges and success stories. And that has been an inspiration to me. And of course, there's that aspect of, making sure that updating my colleagues, specifically Annesha, that we work with in this particular program. And there's also the aspect of identifying the challenges, identifying opportunities, being able also to connect with the stakeholders, the government officials and other organizations across East Africa. So yes, there's a lot of networking, a lot of identifying solutions, the challenges, listening to the women, the challenges, and the solutions, the stories. So yeah, it's really, really a very busy day, and one happy stories, or rather one issues that the inspirations that I get is that women are always encouraging us to, having created a platform for them to share their issues and also engage them, involve them actively to be the solutions. Yeah, so basically that is what happened.
Thank you. We have a question for both Rose and Annesha from Devon. Do we have plans to expand to other countries, specifically Rwanda?
Yes, of course, we are talking about women, the earth, and alliance. We cannot have an alliance if we don't engage other countries. So this year, actually, we are looking forward to, launching, or rather identifying a women-led organization in Rwanda, and I'll be in Kigali for the Women Deliver Conference, and I hope to have a conversation with a number of women-led organizations in Kigali, and hopefully in the coming months or next year, probably we can have we are working in Rwanda. Yeah, we are optimistic that this is going to happen.
Theodora is asking in the chat, how can Indigenous knowledge be even more employed in climate change mitigation efforts?
Say that again.
So this is for either Rose or Annesha. How can Indigenous knowledge, so like Indigenous traditional ecological knowledge, be even more employed in climate change mitigation efforts?
Let me go first. The reason why WEA is working with grassroots women, we know that women have a lot of Indigenous knowledge that can be used to address climate change. And every community that we work with, the entry point is the women, because we know that women, especially across Africa, they are the backbone of the, taking care of their family, and they have the knowledge that can be passed to the generation, to the children. And so creating a platform for them to share the knowledge, with the relevant stakeholders, the scientists, the government officials, it gives them a platform to, to show that they're not just beneficiaries of climate-related projects, but they're also stakeholders, whereby they can give very special information that can, advise the world, advise the global family on how best we can address climate change at grassroots level, because they are the most affected by climate change impact, and so they have the solutions for that. So yes, the women have the Indigenous knowledge that when we listen to them and we give them the platform to share, they are going to address the very, very challenging issues in climate change.
I want to add to that a little bit. So Rose, thank you. That was perfect. And I do agree that, it is the grassroots women leaders who come from Indigenous communities who have this wealth of knowledge. When we design the solutions, we really don't, at WEA, we really don't really give them a design for the leaders to implement. Rather, we build the program from the grassroots using their wealth of knowledge. and what they've been practicing through generations. And another way that we can incorporate, and the question was, how can it be more employed in climate change mitigation effort, is for global bodies, agencies to recognize and indigenous knowledge and give them that space. The grassroots women leaders, grassroots knowledge, indigenous traditional knowledge should be given even more space. Their knowledge is as legitimate as any other scientist knowledge, and a lot of their impact and work is actually empirically has been found to be absolutely robust, and it works. And so therefore, using that knowledge and identifying them, recognizing them, giving them a global platform by global organizations and other bodies who also are, who, for example, in spaces such as COP, etc., would be a great way to also recognize their role in mitigating climate change.
Thank you both so much. And I wanted to also add that WEA, earlier this year, WEA had partnered with the World Economic Forum, who was producing a report called Embedding Indigenous Knowledge in the Conservation and Restoration of Landscapes. And I'll put the link to that in our chat in case you want to check out that report. And then there's also, I think, on WEA's blog, there's a link to last year's World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, where I was able to join them there and do some advocacy and speak about this actual very issue about Indigenous traditional knowledge and valuing that knowledge. So that might be another good resource, and that should be living on the blog. We have another question. Let me see. Can you, for both of you, can you tell us a little bit about what some of the challenges are that grassroots women in East Africa are facing, and how does this partnership and this work solve those specific challenges?
Yeah, of course, we've encountered numerous challenges, and one of them is the cultural, stereotypes, right? And in Africa, women, specifically in East Africa, women are not supposed to plant trees. And so when we come in with our projects, trying to, bring the women on board, restoring the forest, we face the challenge of how can a woman do this? And so we must have, a platform where we incorporate men just to be able to understand our entry point, that we are encouraging women to take part because the ones who are in charge of looking for water and looking for food and making sure that there's food. And so it's important for them to be involved. Of course, the issues of land rights, every time you go to a community, probably having a meeting. So some people tend to think that women have no rights to own land. And so there's no way they can be involved in, farm, agroforestry and other related farm practices. So that is a challenge. So there's also the economic challenges, there's environmental challenges. But one thing we know is that when you have a project that really focuses on the environment or any ecosystem like the forest, it's important for you to incorporate every group in the community, because we know that each and every person has a role to play. And once they understand that they have a role to play, then you'll always have a very peaceful way of working together. So those are the challenges. And yeah, but we have purpose not to focus on the challenges, but to create a way of changing the challenges into opportunities. And that is why we are introducing the eco-entrepreneurship. Yes, we are not just addressing climate change, but it's also a way of creating an income for the women, not just for the women, but for the entire family and the entire community. So yeah, those are the challenges. Of course, the lack of resources. Sometimes you do, you go to a community, implement a project, and then the need, the need is super high. So many other people would want to have the same in their respective communities. So that is really a big challenge of having enough resources to make sure that we take care of all these issues. Yeah.
I just want to add one more line, and Rose is absolutely right, is that, the lack of resources is a huge challenge. And also, even now, women-led, grassroots women-led initiatives are grossly underfunded especially in East Africa also. So that is something that they constantly deal with, especially because they are not really considered ideal change makers in their community. So thank you.
I have so many thoughts around that last line. You said that they're not ideal change makers. It seems like one of those backward sort of beliefs that we're constantly trying to shift. Unfortunately, I do think that's all the time that we have for questions, but our team has collected the questions that are in the chat. So if there are some that we didn't get to, we'll try and get Annesha and Rose to answer that and send those answers up with the follow-up email. But thank you to everyone who did put questions in the chat. We really appreciate your engagement. And while we're just about coming to the close of today's call, we want to be sure that you know that this isn't a stopping point, it's a beginning. And there are many, many ways to take action and to weave yourself deeper and stay plugged into this alliance and our work moving forward. I'm going to ask our team to put up a slide with some recommendations right now. If Rose's work with the women and communities in East Africa have inspired you, here are some small yet impactful activities that you can initiate within your communities to transform them into green spaces, like what they are doing with the Kakamega rainforest in Kenya. These simple actions can have far-reaching impact, bringing communities together, enhancing the environment, and building resilience and hope. You could establish community indigenous tree nurseries, plant the seeds for the future by raising tree sapling nurseries with your community. And these saplings can then be planted in common spaces and parks and elsewhere. Our grassroots women leaders are doing transformational work with their communities and for the world, and we would love your help in amplifying their voices by reposting their incredible stories that Women's Earth Alliance shares on social media. And there will be another slide later on with our social links. Another action you can take is to work within your community to collect kitchen and yard waste to make your own compost. A few simple steps, and in a few months, everyone in your community will have nutrient-rich soil and vegetables to nourish your home gardens and families. And finally, you may also want to check out WEA's Gender and Climate Toolkit. This is a helpful resource to build leadership within communities, serving as a DIY guide for anyone or any community as they begin their journey toward climate and gender justice. And I'm also excited to share that we have recently launched our Planting Seed Grants Spring campaign. In addition to providing technical, business, and leadership training to women leaders and their initiatives around the world, we also provide seed funding, which Rose mentioned, to help these leaders scale their impact. And this year, with your help, we are working with more than 9,000 grassroots women-led initiatives whose environmental impact will be catalyzed by these seed grants. And so through this campaign, grassroots women leaders like those that WEA and WWANC are working with in Kenya, who are protecting Kenya's last tropical rainforest, they will have the seed funding they need to do things like establish nurseries to grow the indigenous trees necessary to reforest this vital ecosystem. We would love for you to join us and support women-led climate solutions. And for a limited time, your gift will be matched dollar for dollar, doubling your impact. And you can give easily by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, or through the link that our team will drop in the chat. And that link is women'searthalliance.org/plantingseedgrants. And if you don't already, we hope that you'll join WEA and WWANC on all the usual social media platforms and keep important conversations like these going. And these are all of our social links. And with that said, from everyone in our Global Alliance, thank you so much for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.